Eleanor clutched the worn leather satchel tighter, its contents holding all her worldly possessions and the hopes for a brand new future. The year was 1888, and the East Coast felt like a cage to her, filled with memories she desperately needed to escape. She yearned for open spaces, for the kind of life whispered about in dime novels. A life where she could be someone, build something, and most importantly, have a family of her own. She wasn't running from anything scandalous, just a quiet sadness that clung to her like the damp morning fog. Her parents were gone, taken by a swift illness that left her alone in the old family home. The house felt empty, a constant reminder of what she had lost. Selling, it was the only logical choice, freeing her from the suffocating grief and providing a small nest egg for her journey. The advertisement in the Matrimonial Gazette had caught her eye weeks ago and sparked a flicker of hope. A rancher in Montana, seeking a wife and mother. The words strong, kind woman needed seemed to leap off the page, speaking directly to the qualities she believed she possessed. He described a simple life, hard work, and the reward of building a home together. It wasn't a grand romance, but a practical partnership, a chance for a fresh start, and the family she so deeply craved. Eleanor wasn't naive. She understood the realities of mail-order marriages. It was a business transaction as much as anything else, a way for lonely men in the West to find companionship and helpmates. But she also believed in the possibility of love blossoming from shared experiences and mutual respect. She imagined cozy evenings by the fire, children's laughter filling the air, and a sense of belonging she had never truly known. With a determined set to her jaw, Eleanor boarded the train, leaving behind the familiar cobblestone streets for the promise of a wild and unknown future. The rhythmic chugging of the engine was a steady drumbeat, urging her onward, westward, toward a destiny she could only dream of. The Matrimonial Gazette was a thin, unassuming publication, easily overlooked amidst the stacks of newspapers and magazines of the general store. But to Eleanor, it was a lifeline, a portal to a different world. She had been hesitant at first, the idea of finding a husband through an advertisement feeling both desperate and slightly scandalous. Yet, the more she considered it, the more it seemed like a practical solution to her loneliness and a chance to fulfill her yearning for a family. She had read through the Gazette several times, carefully considering each advertisement. Some were flowery and romantic, promising grand adventures and passionate love. Those she quickly dismissed. She wasn't looking for a fairy tale. She wanted stability, companionship, and the opportunity to nurture a family. Then she saw it. The advertisement placed by Mr. Samuel Cartwright of Montana. It was straightforward and honest, describing a working ranch, the need for a wife to share the responsibilities, and, most importantly, the desire for a mother for his children. The advertisement didn't specify how many children, only that they needed a loving and guiding hand. Eleanor reread the advertisement countless times, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She imagined a rugged, hard-working man, weathered by the sun and wind, but with a kind heart and a genuine desire for a family. She pictured herself tending to a cozy home, surrounded by the laughter and chatter of children. Summoning all her courage, Eleanor penned a letter to Mr. Cartwright. She described her background, her skills in cooking, sewing, and managing a household, and her sincere desire to create a loving home. She included a small photograph of herself, hoping to convey her sincerity and warmth. Weeks later, a reply arrived, sealed with a simple wax stamp. Mr. Cartwright's letter was brief but polite, expressing his interest and inviting her to travel to Montana. He enclosed a train ticket and a small amount of money for her expenses. He wrote, "I believe you possess the qualities my children and I need in a wife and mother. I await your arrival with hopeful anticipation." Eleanor folded the letter carefully, a surge of hope filling her heart. This was it. This was her chance. The train journey was a blur of changing landscapes, clattering carriages, and the constant rhythm of the rails. Days bled into nights as Eleanor traveled further and further west, leaving behind the familiar comforts of the East Coast for the rugged, untamed beauty of Montana. The plush velvet seats of the initial leg of the journey gradually gave way to harder, more worn benches as she ventured deeper into the frontier. She shared her compartment with a variety of fellow travelers, miners heading to the gold fields, cattlemen returning to their ranches, and families seeking new opportunities in the West. She listened to their stories, learning about the hardships and triumphs of frontier life, and absorbing the spirit of resilience that seemed to permeate the air. The train ride was only the first leg of her journey. After days on the rails, she arrived at a small, dusty town that served as the stagecoach depot. The stagecoach was a far cry from the relative comfort of the train. It was cramped, bumpy, and the air was thick with dust. The journey was slow and arduous, the horses struggling to navigate the rough terrain. Eleanor clung to her satchel, her body aching from the constant jostling. She watched the landscape roll by, a vast expanse of rolling hills, towering mountains, and endless plains. She saw herds of wild horses galloping across the open range, and hawks soaring high above the canyons. The beauty of the land was undeniable, but it was also unforgiving, a constant reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. During the brief stops at stagecoach stations, Eleanor would stretch her legs and try to brush the dust from her clothes. She would buy a cup of coffee and a piece of hardtack, savoring the simple sustenance. She wrote in her journal, documenting her experiences and reflecting on her hopes for the future. Despite the hardships, she remained determined to reach her destination and embrace her new life. Each mile brought her closer to Samuel Cartwright and the children who needed a mother. The long and difficult journey was a test of her resolve, but Eleanor was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She was a woman on a mission, driven by the desire to create a loving home in the heart of the American West. The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of a weathered, wooden ranch house. Dust swirled around Eleanor as she stepped down, her legs stiff and her head spinning. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, painting the scene in hues of orange and gold. This was it. This was the Cartwright Ranch. But there was no Samuel Cartwright to greet her. Instead, a group of children stood huddled together on the porch, their eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. They were a motley crew, ranging in age from toddler to teenager, their clothes patched and worn, their hair unkempt, and their faces smudged with dirt. 7 of them. 7 children stared back at her. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. 7? The advertisement had mentioned children, but she had imagined perhaps 2 or 3, not a whole brood. She swallowed hard, tried to regain her composure. "Hello," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Eleanor. Is your father here?" The oldest boy, who looked to be about 15, stepped forward. He was tall and lanky, with a serious expression on his face. "Pa's gone," he said, his voice flat. "Gone," Eleanor repeated, confused. "But I received a letter from him. He invited me here." The boy nodded. "He did. He was expecting you. But he got sick, real quick. Died 2 weeks ago." A wave of shock washed over Eleanor. Samuel Cartwright was dead? She had traveled all this way, endured so much, only to arrive and find that the man she was supposed to marry was gone. And instead of a husband, she was faced with 7 orphan children. A little girl, no older than 4, tugged on the older boy's sleeve. "Are you our new mama?" she asked, her voice small and hopeful. Eleanor looked at the children, their faces filled with a desperate longing for a mother's love. She had come seeking a family, and now, unexpectedly, a family had been thrust upon her. But this wasn't the family she had imagined. This was a family born of tragedy, a family in need of help and guidance. She didn't know what to do. She was overwhelmed, frightened, and completely unprepared for the situation. This was not the fresh start she had envisioned. This was something else entirely. That night, after helping the children prepare a meager supper of beans and biscuits, and tucking the younger ones in a bed in a cramped room, the oldest boy, Caleb, approached Eleanor with a worn envelope in his hand. "Pa wanted you to have this," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "He said to give it to you when you arrived." Eleanor took the envelope, her fingers trembling. It was addressed to her in Samuel Cartwright's familiar handwriting. She retreated to the small, sparsely furnished room that Caleb had indicated was hers and sat down on the edge of the bed, her heart pounding in her chest. She carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. The words were written in a shaky hand, clearly penned during a time of great illness. "My dearest Eleanor," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means that I am no longer with you and my children. I am deeply sorry for this unexpected turn of events. I had hoped to be here to welcome you and to begin our life together." Eleanor's eyes welled up with tears as she continued to read. "I know this is not the situation you expected, and I would understand if you chose to return east. But I implore you, please consider staying. My children need a mother. They are good children, but they have been through so much. Losing their mother a few years ago was hard on them, and now, with me gone, they are truly alone." The letter went on to describe each of the children, their personalities, their strengths, and their weaknesses. He spoke of Caleb's responsibility, Sarah's kindness, little Emily's need for affection, and so on. It was clear that Samuel Cartwright loved his children deeply and was desperate to ensure their well-being. "I believe you are the woman who can care for them," he wrote. "I saw something in your letter and your photograph that gave me hope. A strength, a kindness, a genuine desire to nurture. I know this is a great burden to ask of you, but I have no one else to turn to. Please, Eleanor, consider becoming the mother my children so desperately need. I will rest easier knowing they are in your capable and loving hands." The letter ended with a simple, heartfelt plea. "With hope and gratitude, Samuel Cartwright." Eleanor folded the letter and clutched it to her chest. She was torn. Part of her wanted to run, to escape this overwhelming responsibility. But another part of her, the part that yearned for a family, felt a deep sense of compassion for these orphan children. Samuel Cartwright's letter had touched her heart, and she knew that she couldn't simply abandon them. The decision was hers to make, and it was the most difficult decision she had ever faced. Sleep offered little respite that night. Eleanor tossed and turned, haunted by Samuel Cartwright's letter and the faces of his children. The enormity of the situation weighed heavily on her. 7 children. It was an impossible task, a burden far greater than she had ever imagined. She was just one woman, with limited resources and no experience raising children, especially not 7 of them on a remote Montana ranch. The thought of returning east was tempting. She could pack her bags, catch the next stagecoach back to the town, and board a train to her former life. It would be the sensible thing to do, the logical choice. She could use the money she had from selling her house to start over, perhaps find a job as a seamstress or a housekeeper. It would be a lonely life, but it would be safe and manageable. But then she remembered the little girl's question, "Are you our new mama?" The innocent hope in her eyes tugged at Eleanor's heart. She thought of Caleb's quiet responsibility and the other children's unspoken grief. They had already lost so much. Could she really abandon them, leaving them to fend for themselves in this harsh and unforgiving land? Doubt gnawed at her. She wasn't a strong, capable frontier woman. She was a city girl, accustomed to comforts and conveniences that were non-existent on the ranch. She didn't know how to cook over a wood stove, tend a livestock, or handle a rifle. How could she possibly provide for these children, protect them from danger, and teach them the skills they needed to survive? The weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. She was overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of the task. She questioned her own abilities, her own strength, and her own sanity. Had she made a terrible mistake? Had she been foolish to believe that she could find happiness and fulfillment in this wild and unknown place? As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, Eleanor sat up in bed, her mind racing. She knew she couldn't make a decision based on fear and doubt. She needed to think clearly, to assess the situation, and to consider all her options. She needed to decide what was best, not just for herself, but for the 7 children who were now looking to her for guidance and hope. The easy choice was to leave, but Eleanor wondered if the right choice was to stay and fight for them, and in doing so, perhaps find a purpose and a strength she never knew she possessed. Eleanor woke early the next morning, her decision still uncertain, but determined to take things one step at a time. She found the children already up and about, silently going about their chores. Caleb was milking the cow, while Sarah was gathering eggs from the chicken coop. The younger ones were huddled around the wood stove, trying to ward off the morning chill. Instead of announcing her intentions, whatever they might be, Eleanor decided to simply help. She started by offering to make breakfast, surprising the children with a batch of pancakes, a treat they hadn't had in a long time. The sweet smell filled the small kitchen, and for the first time since her arrival, Eleanor saw genuine smiles on their faces. After breakfast, she helped Sarah with the laundry, learning how to scrub clothes on a washboard and hang them out to dry in the wind. It was hard work, but as they worked side by side, Eleanor began to feel a connection with the young girl, a shared sense of purpose. In the afternoon, Eleanor discovered a small box of books in the corner of the room. She gathered the younger children around her and began to read aloud, her voice filling the room with stories of faraway lands and brave adventures. Little Emily snuggled close to her, her eyes wide with wonder, while the other children listened intently, their imaginations sparked by the tales. As the days passed, Eleanor continued to find small ways to connect with the children. She helped them with their chores, mending their clothes, and teaching them simple lessons. She learned their names, their personalities, and their individual needs. She discovered that Caleb was a natural leader, Sarah was a gifted artist, and Emily was a sweet and affectionate child. Slowly but surely, the children began to open up to her. They started to trust her, to rely on her, and to see her as more than just a stranger who had arrived at their doorstep. They began to call her Eleanor, then Miss Eleanor, and finally, hesitantly, Mama. These small acts of kindness, these shared moments of laughter and connection, began to chip away at Eleanor's doubts and fears. She realized that she might not be a perfect mother, but she was willing to try. She was willing to learn, to grow, and to give these children the love and care they deserved. The decision to stay was no longer a question of obligation, but a matter of the heart. She was beginning to care for these children, and they were beginning to care for her. A family, born of tragedy and circumstance, was slowly beginning to take shape. The honeymoon period, if it could be called that, was over. Eleanor quickly realized that connecting with the children was only the first step. The real challenge was learning to survive on the ranch with limited resources and no husband to guide her. The ranch house was in disrepair, the roof leaked, the windows were cracked, and the walls were drafty. The pantry was nearly empty, and the money Samuel had left was dwindling quickly. Eleanor had to learn to be resourceful, to make do with what she had, and to find creative solutions to everyday problems. Cooking was a constant struggle. She had never cooked over a wood stove before, and she constantly burned the food or undercooked it. She learned to bake bread from scratch, to churn butter, and to preserve fruits and vegetables. She relied on the children, especially Sarah, to teach her the local recipes and the secrets of cooking on the frontier. Cleaning was another daunting task. The ranch house was always dusty and dirty, and there was never enough water to go around. Eleanor learned to prioritize, to focus on the most essential tasks, and to enlist the children's help in keeping the house as clean as possible. Caring for the ranch was perhaps the most challenging of all. Eleanor had no experience with livestock, but she quickly learned to milk the cow, feed the chickens, and tend to the horses. She helped Caleb with the chores, mending fences, chopping wood, and hauling water. She even learned to ride a horse, albeit awkwardly at first. There were days when Eleanor felt overwhelmed, when she wanted to give up and run away. But then she would look at the children, their faces filled with hope and trust, and she knew that she couldn't let them down. She had become their mother, their protector, and their provider. She had to find a way to make it work, not just for herself, but for them. She learned to rely on her own inner strength, to tap into a resilience she never knew she possessed. She learned to ask for help from her neighbors, who were always willing to lend a hand. She learned to adapt to the harsh realities of frontier life, to embrace the challenges, and to find joy in the simple things. Slowly but surely, Eleanor was transforming from a city girl into a strong, capable frontier woman, a woman who was determined to build a life for herself and her children, no matter the odds. One sweltering afternoon, a sudden and violent thunderstorm descended upon the ranch. The sky turned an ominous shade of black, and the wind howled like a banshee, tearing at the trees and rattling the windows of the ranch house. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the landscape in stark, eerie light. Eleanor quickly ushered the children inside, securing the doors and windows as best she could. The rain began to fall in torrents, drumming against the roof and flooding the yard. The creek that ran behind the ranch house quickly swelled, threatening to overflow its banks. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, sending a shower of sparks and splinters into the air. The tree crashed to the ground, narrowly missing the barn. The children screamed in terror, huddling together in fear. Eleanor knew she had to do something to calm them down. She gathered them around her, telling them stories and singing songs, trying to distract them from the storm raging outside. But the wind continued to howl, and the rain continued to fall, and the fear in the children's eyes was palpable. Then, little Emily started to cough, her chest rattling with each breath. Eleanor realized that the storm had triggered one of Emily's asthma attacks, a condition she had learned about from Samuel's letter. Eleanor had never dealt with an asthma attack before, but she knew that Emily needed help, and she needed it fast. She rummaged through the medicine cabinet, finding a small bottle of cough syrup. She gave Emily a spoonful, but it didn't seem to help. Emily's breathing became more labored, and her face turned blue. Eleanor knew she had to get Emily to the doctor in town, but the storm was too severe to travel. The roads would be flooded, and the horses would be terrified. She was trapped with a sick child in a raging storm, and no one to turn to for help. Summoning all her courage, Eleanor remembered a remedy she had learned from her grandmother, a mixture of honey and lemon juice. She quickly prepared the mixture and gave it to Emily, praying that it would work. Slowly but surely, Emily's breathing began to ease. The color returned to her face, and she stopped coughing. Eleanor held her close, relieved and grateful that the crisis had passed. The storm eventually subsided, leaving behind a trail of destruction. But the ranch house was still standing, and the children were safe. Eleanor had faced a brush with danger, and she had emerged stronger and more confident than ever before. She had proven to herself and to the children that she was capable of handling anything that life threw her way. She was their mother, their protector, and she would always be there for them, no matter what. News of Eleanor's arrival and Samuel Cartwright's passing spread quickly through the small, close-knit community of ranchers and farmers. At first, there was curiosity and speculation. Who was this woman from the East, and what would she do with the 7 Cartwright children? But as they saw Eleanor's determination and her genuine care for the children, their curiosity turned into respect and a willingness to help. One day, a group of women from the nearby ranches arrived at the Cartwright Ranch, bearing gifts of food, clothing, and household supplies. They introduced themselves as Martha, Sarah, a different Sarah, and Bess, and they explained that they were there to offer their support. Martha, a seasoned rancher's wife, showed Eleanor how to properly mend fences and tend to the livestock. Sarah taught her how to quilt, using scraps of fabric to create warm and beautiful blankets for the children. Bess, a former schoolteacher, offered to help Eleanor with the children's education, providing her with books and lesson plans. The men in the community also stepped up to offer their assistance. Jed, a neighboring rancher, helped Eleanor repair the roof of the ranch house, showing her how to replace the rotted wood and secure the shingles. Tom, a blacksmith, sharpened the tools and repaired the broken equipment. Even old Mr. Henderson, the town's gruffest resident, offered Caleb a job, helping him with his chores, teaching him valuable skills, and providing him with a small income. Eleanor was overwhelmed by the generosity and kindness of her neighbors. She had expected to face suspicion and judgment, but instead, she was met with open arms and unwavering support. She realized that she wasn't alone in this endeavor. She had a community of people who cared about her and the children, and who were willing to help her succeed. The community support was invaluable, not only in practical terms, but also in emotional terms. Eleanor found solace and encouragement in her friendships with the other women. They shared stories, advice, and laughter, reminding her that she was not alone in her struggles. The children also benefited from the community's support, finding mentors and role models in the adults around them. The Cartwright Ranch was no longer just an isolated homestead. It was now a part of something bigger, a part of a community that cared about its members and that was willing to help them in times of need. Eleanor had come to Montana seeking a fresh start and a family, and she had found both, not just in the 7 children she had inherited, but also in the community that had embraced her and helped her build a new life. As time went on, the Cartwright Ranch transformed from a place of grief and uncertainty into a home filled with laughter and love. Eleanor's affection for the children grew deeper each day, and she began to feel like a real mother to them. The children, in turn, embraced her as their own, showering her with affection and gratitude. Evenings were often spent gathered around the fireplace, Eleanor reading stories aloud while the children listened intently, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. Sometimes they would play games, sing songs, or simply talk about their day, sharing their joys and their sorrows. Mealtimes became a cherished ritual, a time for the family to come together and share a meal, to laugh, and to connect. Eleanor made sure that there was always enough food on the table, even if it meant sacrificing her own portion. She taught the children good manners and proper etiquette, but she also encouraged them to be themselves, to express their opinions, and to laugh freely. Birthdays and holidays were celebrated with great enthusiasm. Eleanor organized special meals, decorated the ranch house with handmade decorations, and gave the children small gifts, often things she had made herself. She wanted them to feel loved and cherished, to know that they were special and important. One warm summer evening, Eleanor was sitting on the porch, watching the children play in the yard. Caleb was teaching Sarah how to ride a horse, while Emily and the younger children were building a fort out of branches and leaves. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the scene, painting the landscape in hues of orange and pink. Eleanor felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. She had come to Montana seeking a family, and she had found one, not in the way she had expected, but in a way that was even more meaningful and fulfilling. She had not only become a mother to these children, but she had also found a purpose in life, a reason to get up each morning and face whatever challenges lay ahead. She smiled as she watched the children play, their laughter echoing through the air. She knew that they had a long and difficult road ahead, but she also knew that they would face it together as a family. They had each other, and they had her, and that was all that mattered. Eleanor had come to Montana seeking a fresh start, but she had found so much more. She had found a family, a community, and a love that she never knew existed. She had found her place in the world, and she was finally home. Just when Eleanor felt like she had finally found her footing, a new complication arose. A local rancher, a widower named Daniel Miller, began to show an interest in her. Daniel was a kind and hardworking man, with a gentle smile and a warm heart. He had a successful ranch of his own, and he was well respected in the community. Daniel started by offering Eleanor small acts of kindness, helping her with chores, bringing her gifts of food, and simply spending time with her and the children. He seemed genuinely interested in getting to know them, and he quickly won over their hearts. One evening, after helping Eleanor repair a broken fence, Daniel asked if he could walk her back to the ranch house. As they strolled along the path, he turned to her and said, "Eleanor, I've been meaning to tell you, I admire you a great deal. You're a strong and capable woman, and you've done an amazing job with these children. I've lost my wife some years back now, and I do miss the companionship. I was wondering if you might consider courting me." Eleanor was taken aback. She hadn't expected this. She had been so focused on raising the children and surviving on the ranch that she hadn't even considered the possibility of finding love again. She liked Daniel. She appreciated his kindness, his his generosity, and his genuine affection for the children. He was a good man, and he would undoubtedly make a good husband. But she couldn't help but feel conflicted. If she married Daniel, she would have security and stability. She would have a partner to share the burdens of ranch life, and she would have a loving husband to share her life with. It would certainly make providing for the children easier. But what about the children? How would they feel about her marrying Daniel? Would they feel like she was replacing their father? Would they accept Daniel as their new father? And what about her own feelings? Did she love Daniel, or was she simply grateful for his attention and his support? Eleanor knew that she had a difficult decision to make. She had to weigh her own needs and desires against the needs and desires of the children. She had to consider what was best for everyone involved. It was a decision that would shape her future and the future of the Cartwright family. It was a decision that she couldn't take lightly. Eleanor spent several sleepless nights wrestling with Daniel's proposal. She talked to Martha and Bess, seeking their advice, but ultimately, she knew that the decision was hers alone. She observed the children's interactions with Daniel, noting their easy laughter and genuine affection for him. But she also saw their subtle anxieties, the unspoken fear that she might leave them, that their newfound family might be disrupted. One evening, she sat down with Caleb and Sarah, the two oldest children, and asked them how they felt about Daniel. Caleb, ever the responsible one, said that he thought Daniel was a good man and that he would be a good provider for the family. Sarah, more attuned to emotions, said that she liked Daniel, but she was afraid that if Eleanor married him, things would change. Eleanor listened carefully to their concerns, and she realized that their fears were valid. She knew that marrying Daniel would inevitably change the dynamic of the family. It would bring new opportunities and new challenges, but it would also disrupt the bond that they had all worked so hard to build. After much soul-searching, Eleanor came to a decision. She knew that she cared for Daniel, but she wasn't in love with him. And more importantly, she realized that her primary responsibility was to the children. They were her family, and she couldn't risk jeopardizing their happiness and well-being for her own personal gain. The next day, she sought out Daniel and told him her decision. She explained that she admired him and appreciated his offer, but that she couldn't marry him. She told him that her heart belonged to the children, and that she couldn't risk anything that might hurt them. Daniel was disappointed, but he understood. He respected Eleanor's decision, and he told her that he would always be there for her and the children, as a friend and a neighbor. Eleanor felt a sense of relief wash over her. She had made the right decision, the decision that was best for the children. She had chosen the family that she had built over a traditional marriage. She had chosen love over security, and she knew that she wouldn't regret it. She had found her family, and she was determined to protect it no matter what. The ranch, with its hardships and its joys, was their home, and she was going to make sure it stayed that way. With the decision about Daniel behind her, Eleanor poured all her energy into the ranch. She and the children worked tirelessly, mending fences, planting crops, and tending to the livestock. Caleb, now a young man, took on more and more responsibility, proving to be a capable and reliable partner. Sarah continued to excel in her studies, showing a talent for writing and a keen interest in the world beyond the ranch. Even the younger children contributed, helping with chores and bringing joy to the household. Eleanor implemented new farming techniques, learning from her neighbors and experimenting with different crops. She diversified the ranch's income, raising chickens for eggs and selling homemade butter and cheese at the local market. She also started a small garden, growing fresh vegetables for the family and selling the surplus to the townspeople. Slowly but surely, the ranch began to prosper. The crops yielded bountiful harvests, the livestock thrived, and the family's income increased steadily. Eleanor was able to repair the ranch house, adding a new roof, new windows, and a fresh coat of paint. She also purchased new furniture and household items, making the ranch house more comfortable and inviting. The children's clothes were no longer patched and worn. They had new shoes, and they attended school regularly. They were healthy, happy, and well-adjusted, thriving under Eleanor's loving care. The community continued to support Eleanor and the children, offering their assistance and encouragement. Daniel remained a close friend, always willing to lend a hand or offer advice. He often visited the ranch, sharing meals with the family and helping with chores. Eleanor's hard work and dedication had paid off. She had transformed the Cartwright Ranch from a struggling homestead into a thriving family farm. She had provided her children with a loving home, a good education, and a bright future. She had proven that she was capable of anything she set her mind to, that she could overcome any obstacle, and that she could build a successful life, even in the face of adversity. The ranch was now a symbol of their resilience, their hard work, and their unwavering love for one another. It was a testament to the power of family, the importance of community, and the transformative power of love. The once empty house now echoed with laughter. The fields flourished with crops, and Eleanor knew she had created the life she always dreamed of in the most unexpected of places. 5 years had passed since Eleanor first arrived at the Cartwright Ranch, and the town of Meadow Creek was buzzing with excitement. It was Caleb's graduation day from the local school, a milestone that marked not only his academic achievement, but also the collective success of the Cartwright family. The entire town was invited to a celebration at the ranch, a testament to the family's integration and contribution to the community. Eleanor had been preparing for weeks, organizing the festivities with the help of Martha, Bess, and the other women in town. The ranch house was decorated with colorful banners and streamers, and long tables were set up in the yard, laden with food and drinks. The aroma of barbecue filled the air, mingling with the sweet scent of wildflowers. As the guests began to arrive, Eleanor stood on the porch, greeting them with a warm smile. She watched as Caleb, dressed in his best suit, shook hands with the townsfolk, his face beaming with pride. Sarah, now a budding writer, read a heartfelt poem she had written for her brother, her words capturing the essence of their family's journey. Even little Emily, no longer the sickly child Eleanor had rescued from the storm, sang a cheerful song, her voice clear and bright. The celebration was a joyous occasion, filled with laughter, music, and dancing. The community came together to celebrate Caleb's achievement and to honor Eleanor's dedication to the children. Daniel, ever the supportive friend, raised a toast to Eleanor and the Cartwright family, praising their resilience and their unwavering spirit. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the ranch, Eleanor gathered the children around her. She looked at their faces, their eyes shining with happiness and gratitude. She knew that they had come a long way, that they had overcome many obstacles, and that they had built a life together that was filled with love and purpose. "We did it," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "We built a family, we built a home, and we built a life that we can be proud of." The children embraced her, their love and affection palpable. They were a family, bound together by tragedy, but strengthened by love and resilience. The celebration was a testament to their bond, a celebration of their success, and a celebration of their future. It was a moment that Eleanor would cherish forever, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, love and hope can triumph. The once orphaned children were now thriving young adults, ready to make their mark on the world, all thanks to the love and dedication of the mail-order bride who became the mother they wished for. Years later, Eleanor sat on the porch of the now-renovated ranch house, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in vibrant hues of orange, pink, and purple. The ranch was quiet, the children grown and scattered across the country, pursuing their dreams. Caleb was a successful businessman in the nearby town. Sarah was a renowned journalist. Emily was a nurse, and the younger children were all forging their own paths. She thought back to that day, so long ago, when she had stepped off the stagecoach, a naive city girl with a satchel full of dreams. She had come seeking a husband and a family, but she had found something far greater, something far more meaningful. She had found a purpose in life, a reason to get up each morning and face whatever challenges lay ahead. She had found a strength she never knew she possessed, a resilience that had allowed her to overcome every obstacle. And most importantly, she had found a family, not the family she had expected, but a family that was bound together by love, loyalty, and shared experiences. She had not married Samuel Cartwright, the man she had come to Montana to marry. She had not found romantic love in the traditional sense, but she had found a love that was deeper, more profound, and more enduring. She had found the love of a mother, the love of a family, and the love of a community. She had come to Montana seeking a fresh start, seeking to escape the grief and loneliness of her past. And she had found that, and so much more. She had found a home, a place where she belonged, a place where she was loved and appreciated. She smiled a gentle, knowing smile. She had arrived in Montana as a mail-order bride, seeking a husband and a family. But she had become so much more. She had become a mother, a friend, a neighbor, and a pillar of the community. She had become the heart and soul of the Cartwright Ranch. Eleanor looked out at the vast expanse of the Montana landscape, her heart filled with gratitude. She had come seeking a family, and she had found it, not in the way she had imagined, but in the most unexpected and beautiful way possible. She had found the family she always wanted, not through marriage, but through love, compassion, and unwavering dedication. And as she sat there, watching the sunset, she knew that she had made the right choice. She had chosen love over security. She had chosen family over tradition, and she had chosen a life that was rich, full, and meaningful. She was Eleanor, the mail-order bride who arrived to find 7 children and no husband, but who became the mother they wished for, and in doing so, found her own true happiness.